Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Tim Clinton, Executive Director of the James Dobson Family Institute and President of the American Association of Christian Counselors. Wanting to take just a brief moment to let you know that we love, appreciate, and are praying for you. Our entire team here at Family Talk is doing that very thing. And we also wanted to encourage you, if you're struggling or you could use some encouragement, to feel free to call us and pray with us. Our toll-free number is 877-732-6825. That number again is 877-732-6825. Or you could also connect with us online at drjamesdobson.org. Thanks for letting us be a part of your life every day. We are going to get through this. Dr. Dobson said we are going to get through this challenging time, and we're going to do it together. Let's go now to our regular programming.
Hello, everyone. I'm Roger Marsh, and welcome to Family Talk, a ministry of the James Dobson Family Institute. Today, we are revisiting a classic interview originally aired here a few years ago. Here now is Dr. Dobson to set up this broadcast.
Many of you may remember a story that I've shared with you about an accident that I had in September of 2011. It was actually on September 10th, and I remember it well. I fell off a horse and I broke my clavicle and my scapula, and I was in the hospital and in rehab for 17 days. I've completely recovered from that fall now, but I tell you that I'm thankful to be alive. I have no residual effects from that fall, but there was a time when Shirley was leaning over me that we both thought that I was going to die, but the Lord was gracious to me. The day before I fell on that September 10th, there was another accident. It's a freaky thing. It was at the same ranch where I was. And he's joined us in the studio today to tell us the rest of the story and catch up with what's happened recently. And I'll give you just a bit of a clue as to where we're going, because John is a walking miracle. And what he went through was absolutely unbelievable. And he's going to give us a quick recap about that in a minute. But if you really want to know what the Lord has done for him and what he's brought him through, you need to download the broadcast from the website to get all the details. And it's well worth listening to. Before we get started, let me introduce John Ramstead to you. He's the founder and CEO of Beyond Influence. That's an LLC where he works with leaders to create the life God meant for them to live. John is also a certified Christian leadership coach and founder of the Eternal Leadership Podcast, with the mission to equip and inspire leaders to work in God's kingdom. And that podcast is now heard in 160 countries. All this has happened since John's accident. He is a remarkable man. He was in the Navy. He actually flew a Navy F-14 in combat situations, in armed attacks, in Desert Storm. So that's another history. The amazing thing is he came through combat like that, in that stressful and dangerous situation, and came home without a scratch, came home and fell off a horse. Now explain that one. And what is also remarkable is what I've already just said. On September 9th, the day before I fell off a horse, John was riding a horse and had an absolutely horrendous fall into a metal fence. John, first of all, thank you for being here. You're looking great. God has done a miracle. I said it. It's really true, isn't it?
It is, and thank you for having me, Doctor. I really appreciate you and Shirley, and just being, this whole journey has been a very long, challenging journey, and you and Shirley have been there through this whole thing, and your friendship has just been invaluable to us. So I thank you.
It's been a challenge not only for you, but for Donna, your
my wife Donna,
She's a
and my 3
physical
boys.
therapist.
Yep.
And you have 3 boys.
Yes, sir.
And your great concern through all that you were going through was for your family.
Yeah.
Because when something like this happens, it affects everybody, the entire family.
It sure
But
does.
they've landed on their feet, and so have you.
Yeah, they're all doing great today.
Well, let's go back to that day on the 9th of September, 2011. You and I were riding horses together. I was right behind you, and you were taking a lap around the corral, and your horse spooked. Explain what happened.
Yeah, I was on the horse, and it started walking, and then it was just kind of a trot, and then all of a sudden, my horse just pivoted to the right and just bolted and took off. And I remember being almost like flat on my back, where it felt like his rump was hitting me in the shoulder blades. And every step, he's accelerating, he's going faster, and I'm just trying to get my weight back up on the saddle. So I was scared I was going to flip off the back of this horse and get kicked in the head. So I'm squeezing him as hard as I can. I didn't know this at the time, but I guess I was telling the horse to go faster.
Well, he did.
I didn't read the instruction manual. So
I was right behind you, John.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is you and I had just had a conversation saying that we were not unfamiliar with horses. I grew up in Texas. I don't know where you grew up, but
I grew up in Minnesota, and we'd done a number of, like trail rides and, things like that. And I was comfortable
rode
on
a
a
lot
horse.
as a kid, and yet moments later you had your accident and I had mine the next day.
Yeah.
So it was really a freaky kind of deal. But the horse is now running. He's completely out of control. I'm behind you. I see it. I knew you were in trouble, and you were doing everything you could to stop that horse. You were really giving him whatever's necessary on the reins, and he went straight into a fence. I will never forget it. Tell everyone what happened.
Well, we're going faster, and we're going faster and faster. And my first thought was, I got to turn the horse, because you remember that fence line ended, and if he'd turned to the left, it was open up toward the mountain. So I figured he's going to turn, and I pulled as hard as I could on the rein, the left rein, and he pulled his head straight back, almost pulled the rein out of my hand, and he's just still going straight at this fence, perpendicular to it, faster, and then I'm kind of starting to panic. I've been, like you said, in combat and flown low levels and landed on the boat at night. I've actually never felt this out of control before. And I tried to pull his head again, and he pulled his head back straight. And then I realized, I'm thinking, this horse can't be suicidal. He's got to turn, and I got to jump off this horse, but I'm up so high and we're going so fast. If I jump off, I'm going to break my neck. And then the next thing I knew, I'm looking at the fence, and I realized there's no escape. And it's like just everything slowed down, and I just had this moment of clarity. And I said to myself, this is not going to end well. I remember saying that, and that's the last thing I remembered, Doc, until I woke up on the ground with everybody around me holding me down.
I will never forget that experience. And my horse was spooked too. He saw what had happened to another horse and you, and he would not go near there. And I couldn't get him close enough for me to try to help you, because he wouldn't go near it. And it was just an absolutely tragic moment of all our lives. I finally got off the horse and ran to you. By then, other people had gotten there, and you had suffered not just a head injury, but a near life-taking head injury. Explain again. You hit a metal fence with your eyebrow, didn't you?
Actually, it was the fence was like that 3-inch rolled steel bar. So when I got thrown into the fence, the horse bucked me into the fence as he kind of
he threw you off.
He threw me off. He actually flipped over, is what I understand. I didn't see it, but I guess he flipped over.
That's what he did.
Crashed into the horse. And when he did that, he launched me. So that top bar hit me from my teeth up through across my left eye. So it hit me across this part of my face. So I lost 8 teeth. These have all been replaced. I shattered the entire left side of my skull. The base of the skull, the base below the brain was all broken. My left eye is blind permanently. All the bones behind the eye socket shattered, and cut the optic nerve. I broke vertebra in my neck, in the base of my skull, pretty much destroyed my right shoulder. The second bar down, I'm guessing this is what happened, but it hit me across the chest, kind of the same way. But I broke 4 ribs, and then one of the broken ribs punctured my left lung. And then, to fast forward, I ended up spending 7 weeks in ICU, 20 months at Craig Hospital with a traumatic brain injury, and in that intervening period of time had 25 surgeries and procedures. That's how serious what happened to me.
Well, we called for a helicopter, the Flight for Life helicopter, and it seemed like very quickly, but we were having to hold you down because you were unconscious and yet you were trying to get up. And it was awful, John. I've never experienced anything. I saw P. Mirovich die in my arms, but I have not seen anything as traumatic as what occurred to there. Your eye was on your cheek, and obviously it's been replaced with a false eye. But you look good, John, and it's amazing that to look at you, one would never know what you've been through.
They were actually able to save it. This is actually my eye, even
That
though I
is
can't
your
see.
eye.
Yeah, I don't have to have a
that-
prosthetic. So
Is that no wonder it looks like it's real? Now they had to take your skull, a portion of your skull off, and the brain had been compressed down into your cheekbone area, and they had to lift it twice, didn't they?
yeah, they had to do 2 craniotomies. Yeah.
And describe that. They took your skull off.
Well, the good
And-
thing is you're not awake during all this, but they go from ear to ear, and they took off the whole front quarter of the skull, and the front sinus on the left side was so damaged they just removed it, and the lining around the brain had been lacerated from broken pieces of bone, so they had to repair all that. And the base of the skull that the brain rests on was multiple fractures and like little bone fragments sticking up. They repaired all that. And then they put it all back together, and it's amazing what they can do medically. But because of all that damage, the day after that first craniotomy, when I was in ICU, I ended up getting meningitis that was very, very bad, very life-threatening. Had a fever that almost 107. And then 10 days after that first craniotomy, there was a lot of complications. And every time I'd move, my heart rate would crash, my blood pressure would crash. Then they thought this was another my poor wife going through all this. Another
She
life-threatening
was out
situation.
there for 5 hours during this surgery with nobody with her.
The second surgery, because the whole family, everybody was in town. We had people visiting. Everybody was around. They didn't foresee this second surgery, which was 10 days after the first one. Remember, I was in ICU for 5 weeks. So the day that they decided they have to go back in, she was alone in my room and had to go into wait in an operating waiting room for 5-6 hours, just hoping that I come out alive. And the doctor also told her, I'm not sure
If you're going to make it.
not just that. The other hard part was, he could survive, but he might not be the person you remember. Also, right, we're dealing with the brain and damage to the brain. So, they wouldn't make any promises or set any expectations with her. And so I understand the surgeon's point of view, but that's pretty hard for, a wife to go through.
And she's out of town. She doesn't know people.
Nobody up there that we know, yeah.
And I was in the same hospital that you were, in another part of the hospital, not nearly as badly injured. How freaky is that? I mean, we're both riding horses side by side and talking about the fact that we're not unfamiliar with horses. And a day later, we're both in the same hospital from a fall from a horse.
Yeah.
And I was,
I'm not allowed to ride anymore.
Yeah, nor am I. Nor am I. I'm on blood thinner, so I could have died very easily from that, and just from the loss of blood, because I fell. We had 6 shooters, and we were riding around the corrals shooting at balloons. So I was holding a 6-shooter, a real gun, but with blanks, and I fell on top of the gun. And that's what broke my shoulder. But it also saved my life, because if I'd hit my head that hard on the ground, I wouldn't have survived. So God's been good to you and me, hasn't he?
Yeah, he sure has.
Now, John, just getting out of the hospital was not the end of it for you.
No.
Because you have really been in stages of recovery and repair ever since. How are you doing now? And what has that journey been like?
Well, today I can still I only can work about 25 hours a week. I can do 30 hours a week on occasion if I'm, depending on kind of my schedule, but I have to really manage my time. And my brain injury was so severe when I first checked in to Craig Hospital. The expectation, I was told later, was that if I recovered 40, 50% cognitively, they would have been pretty happy with that because of the damage that I had. But at the accident, God showed up and took away the pain that I was in, told me he was going to heal me. When I checked out of Craig Hospital and I did all the neuropsych testing and IQ and all these, I had recovered 100% cognitively, which was really neat. I got another chance to share with my neuropsychologist my whole testimony, because through this whole period of time, I've been able to share my testimony with thousands, if not millions of people. Before the accident, Doc, I probably shared it with literally 5 or 6 people my whole life. Anything that was personal about my faith. Every day there is just chronic pain in my neck. There was just so much damage and scar tissue. I think I've had, I don't even know, I've lost count, 7 or 8 surgeries just on my neck. Just to try to.
We came in here a few minutes ago, you said you're in pain today.
Yeah, my neck up here in the base of my skull, and I always have a headache here in the back. And then when I get tired, if I am not careful with managing my energy or taking naps throughout the day, I get a really bad headache across my temples. And when this headache, and it's like 2 separate headaches, and sometimes they connect. That's not good. Also, the part of the brain that was damaged is the whole area of just kind of emotional control, social filters, things like that. So when I get really tired, I have to be very careful around my family, because when I'm in that mode, I don't let myself go out in public, go out to dinner, do a speaking engagement. But just even around my wife and kids, I have to be careful, because I'll overreact to things. I'll hear things they didn't say. And so but I've learned how to manage a lot of this, live a life, get back professionally. And, one of the benefits is, this long of a recovery and being at home Donna was my caregiver for almost 2 years. It was a great time, though, to just spend some really quality time with my wife and kids, as I was just trying to figure out, why did God even save my life? Why am I even here? What is this, the second chance I've been given? What do I even do with it?
John, I said at the beginning of the program that I have great love and appreciation for you, and that you're a remarkable man. And one of the reasons is because of the way you have handled this and what you've done with it. You and I were having lunch together a while back, and you told me that if you could go back and relive that day, you wouldn't change it. How could that possibly be true? Did I understand you correctly?
You're correct. I was asked that question recently, and life is a series of events and processes, and I think each, and you can almost, you wrote that book about when God doesn't make sense. You gave that to Don and I, which was a huge comfort. Anybody out there that is just going through a period of time that just you can't doesn't make sense, that's a great book to read. But you know what? You cannot connect the dots, I don't think, in the present or even looking forward. It's only until enough time has passed. If I look at the dots between the accident and today, and the richness of life God's given me, and some new relationships, a relationship with you, a relationship with thousands of people through our podcast, the hundreds of people I've been able to coach and equip, the companies I've been able to work in, the relationship I have with my wife and my kids. But I think even more important than that, I think 2 questions that I really had to answer as I went through this recovery that were life-changing for me is, who really is God? When I was in God's presence at the accident, I had never seen God before as somebody who is a person that I can have a personal relationship with, the same way I can have a relationship with you, or especially my wife, Donna. I think he's modeled marriage after this relationship that's at a so much different level, right? I'm from the military. My view of God was more of this authoritarian figure, right? You know, he loves you, he's got your back, but you don't go up to the commanding general and say, "Sir, I'm having a bad day, can I have a hug?" Right?
Hardly.
That'd be what we call a career-limiting move. And I never understood that until I was in God's presence, and he spoke to me, and he took away the pain, he told me he was going to heal me. And immediately I realized that this God, think about this though, the God of the universe who created everything, who's everywhere, who's omnipotent, cared about me as a person individually to come and minister to in that moment, and realizing that he cares
that's
and
incomprehensible.
loves everybody that way, Doc. That's the message that it's not just me. This isn't special and unique to me, John Ramstead. He wants to have that relationship with everybody. And something else I reflect on when I was in that moment, I felt this love, because the first thought I had that went through my brain as I'm laying there just crushed, and I felt God's presence, the first thought I had was, I'm not worthy of somebody loving me like this. And something I really reflected back on was that everything else I'd ever done in my past, good, bad, sinful, otherwise, was not even relevant to how he felt about me as a person. And it was life-changing. So I had to answer that question, who is God? And then who am I? And I think a better way to ask that question is, who did God create me to be? And those are the two questions that, as I recovered, I really read Scripture and thought on and prayed and listened to sermons, listened to you, listened to podcasts, as I was just searching for meaning of this second chance that I'd been given. And it never, I've talked to some other people that have been in this situation. They've almost felt like the second chance was a burden. I never really felt it like this was some burden, that something I had to live up to and perform to, but it was a gift. And I had this
beautiful
gift, and it was up to me to open it and bring it to fullness. And I was sharing with
you call it a gift. A lot little get angry. Get angry at God for doing this.
Well,
Did you ever feel any anger about this? It didn't have to happen. God could have prevented it. He didn't. That's the wall that I talk about, that sooner or later everybody hits a wall.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do. It's part of life. And I call it not being able to make the pieces fit. And sometimes I think Christians experience that more intensely than those who are not, because they expect nothing. And we're kind of led to believe that he is going to be like a winking, blinking grandfather who's going to protect you from everything unpleasant. And if it does come about that you experience something bad, you're going to understand it. It's going to make sense to you. The truth of the matter is, it usually doesn't. And you will be asking questions that he does not answer. I don't know why that's true, but it was true for Jesus on the cross, who also asked the why question. Everybody asks it, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on God's point of view, of course, we have to try to figure that out on our own. And finally, you get to the place where you just say, if God wanted me to understand this, he'd have given me a whole lot more information, because I don't understand it, and I will someday.
That's an insightful point to end this classic edition of Family Talk. I'm Roger Marsh, and I pray that you've been blessed and encouraged by John Ramstead's story. Every one of us will encounter a valley in our Christian walk. Pain, loss, and struggle are unavoidable parts of life, and sometimes we can't help but ask God, why? But if we put our trust in him during those desperate times, he promises never to leave us. You can learn more about John Ramstead and his story by going to today's broadcast page at drjamesdobson.org. Apart from this broadcast, another way we hope to encourage you is through our helpful resources, and the one we want to highlight right now is Dr. Dobson's book, When God Doesn't Make Sense. This best-selling work tackles the tough questions we ask God in moments of extreme heartache. This timeless book can be yours. It's our way of thanking you for your gift of $20 or more in support of Family Talk. So go to drjamesdobson.org. That's drjamesdobson.org and make your donation there. or call 877-732-6825 and discover how easy it is to support our ministry over the phone. Again, that number is 877-732-6825. And please know how much we greatly appreciate your generosity, and we pray that this resource will be a blessing to you and your family. Well, on the next edition of Family Talk, you'll hear the conclusion of John Ramstead's powerful testimony. He'll explain how God used this accident to His ultimate glory. The conclusion of this story will absolutely encourage those who are in despair right now. So you won't want to miss out on what John Ramstead shares on his testimony on tomorrow's Family Talk broadcast. I'm Roger Marsh. Thanks for listening.
This has been a presentation of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute.